What's up, everybody? We are back. John Delarose here, delarose.com. That's DELARROZ.com. I'm going to leave a link to my website in the description below. And there you're going to find my newsletter, and you'll be able to download Flying Sparks Volume 1 for free by signing up for my newsletter. Now, Flying Sparks is my graphic novel series. I'm 15 issues in already, and people are hailing it as wonderful. The most recent installment, Volume 4, just came out, and some folk have read it already, said it has reached new heights. And of course, we get better at things as we keep doing them, and that's going to be the topic of today's video. I came out with a tweet this morning because I was thinking about comic people and the comic YouTube complainer ecosystem, which I've now kind of dubbed as its own thing. And this is in relation to the way that Doug Ernst is out there being more than disappointing in the way that he engages in DMs with people and passive aggressively attacks my character in order to try to get people not to associate with me. And he's had a pattern about doing this because he really doesn't want people associating with, less proper people or whatever reason he has. And so he wants to try to incentivize people not to do that. Now, as a guy who made his sort of name by complaining about comics and then finally cashed in on that on making comics and is really a part of this culture war, even though he'll go out there and tell you he's not. And we'll get into the culture war element at the end of the video. We're going to split this into two parts here. Well, maybe not the video, but the segment of the video will be two parts. And where was I? I lost my train of thought, and I should edit this out, but I'm not going to because I'm not a very good YouTuber, but I'm a good writer, and this is where it gets different. All right, so what invariably happens with these guys is what I mentioned in my tweet here, and this isn't unique to him. This is across the YouTube complainer ecosystem. In most instances, if the person is a YouTube comic book complainer turned amateur comic creator, they tend to be a failure both on the culture war front and on the quality of book front. It's a trend at this point to where I'm surprised people buy into it. Now, this got retweeted by Razorfist, and so I got a lot of attention, and I also got a lot of heat for this because a lot of people took this tweet to say people shouldn't be trying to fight the culture war, we should just give up, which I did not imply whatsoever. But I was talking about a specific class of people, which is the YouTube comic book complainer. And there's a whole host of them. You can name a lot of them off the top of your head, I'm sure. And they formed a group together. I was a part of the group for a while. But I really was an outcast in the group because I was not the YouTube comic book complainer. I was a professional writer. And I'd been writing over and over and over again. And I was around and I was like, yes, I agree about these comics being a problem in the mainstream industry and not being good and them selling us a load of garbage. But I came at it from a different slant as a professional writer, knowing what I'm doing on that front. And that came from years of work and experience. So when these guys came around and invariably they tried to do their own thing because they saw that there was cash to be made from making their own comic and extracting that money from their audience from YouTube. They didn't put in the work. And so the reason these guys get so snippy all the time is because they understand that they're coming out with my first comic, right? My first comic trademark. And it's like they just slap something down, and because they've got an ego, because they've already got an audience and they've got money coming from it, they all have the same attitude that this is going to be great, and people know it's great. You can tell because they're giving me money. Well, people don't know it's great because you've never come out with a product before. You've never actually written anything before. And this is where they get into so much trouble. And every time they come out with one of these, they release their book. Maybe they hire a decent artist to cover up for their bad scripting, or maybe they are an artist who then is writing for the first time and their art's pretty good, but their scripting really leaves a lot to be desired. This happens in all these instances. But they come out with books that are disappointments, and they come out with books that really don't hold up to muster, even to the ones that they complain about. The ones that they complain about often have at least good structure, some character development. Maybe you don't like the way their take on the character. Maybe it's kind of an affront to continuity or history or something like that. But at least there's something going on there. And a lot of these amateur comics just don't pan out. And they don't pan out for very good reason, because they've never done it before. You are not going to come out with some genius by never having worked on something before. This doesn't work in any aspect of your life. It's some, you can have a fluke, but it's a 1 in a bajillion chance. And you should not expect that that's the case. Everything comes through hard work. This has been a management talk about, for decades, that you have to spend 10,000 hours on something to truly become a master of it. And somebody coming out with a 48-page book and just slapping it together real quick and doing that once a year is not spending 10,000 hours writing. Now, the equivalent to 10,000 hours writing that it gets used a lot, and I heard this first, I believe, from Harlan Ellison, that it takes 1 million words of writing in order to get to a point where you can produce something decent, right? And so your first 1 million words need to be viewed as just amateurish practice. And these guys are never going to get there, because an average comic script for a 22-page single issue takes about 4,000 words. So if they do 4,000 words, and say they got 2 of them because it's a 48-pager or whatever, just call it 4,000 words for that. And they have a one comic a year that they're coming out with, right? That's going to take them 12 and a half years to get to that 1 million words. So they're never going to come out with a professional quality comic, and for about 10 to 15 years. That's the reality of the truth of what these YouTubers are doing. But because they've got an audience, because they've got money coming in, because they've got an ego, they never see this. They get a diva complex where it's like, I am just a genius and I'm going to buck the trends of everything else. And so they come out with products which are inferior. And so what they do is they lash out psychologically against people who are actual professionals. And as mentioned, I never really fit into this YouTube community because I'm not a YouTuber. I'm a professional writer, and I do YouTube to promote my professional writing because I see that ends up working. And that's why I make bad YouTube videos like this, because, same thing. I'm not willing to put in the work into becoming a good YouTuber. It's the exact same thing. I'm not saying that I'm just inherently good at everything either. But I worked on writing for a number of years before I got my first comic, Flying Sparks, out. So I had a different point where I understood character. I understood just sort of pacing. I understood plot development and how that works to a much greater degree than a bunch of guys who just complain on YouTube. So that's the difference there. And what happens is the attitude towards the professional writer is a snub. They hold their nose high because they're making money, and they're going, we don't need professional writers. There's nothing that they can do that I can't do too. And that's where they get into a lot of trouble on that front. And that hurts the culture war front too. And so this is what we'll get into, this aspect of it now. They're unreliable on the culture war front because one, they're shunning the good works that are out there by professionals that are actual real quality works, for one. And so what happens is what rises to the top are these amateurish, poorly written works on every single front. And so it's very hard for the culture to really get an engine going together and actually having the cream rise to the top, which would then help change the culture. Instead, these mediocre to worse books are what are rising to the top regularly. And the culture really can't change or really can't reestablish itself because there's nothing to latch onto. It's just a bunch of hot garbage. And it's really sad on that front. But they do this also because of their psychology of being the comic YouTube complainer. At the end of the day, every single one of these comic YouTube complainers has a dream that they will be writing for Marvel or DC one day. In the case of Douglas Ernst, he wants to write Spider-Man so badly. He's been sitting out there making YouTube videos for years and years and years in of course, gamma male fashion. hoping that Marvel will notice his criticism of Spidey-Man and see how Spidey-Man would be so much better in his hands because he truly understands the character. If only they would see. And so he makes every tactical decision with that in mind, with that goal in mind. Now, of course, that's never going to happen. Poor Doug. Marvel will never hire you because you are a conservative. And the reason I started this movement and started getting it going and started writing articles about it is because Marvel and DC blacklist conservative writers and never hire conservative writers. No, it doesn't matter how proper you are. It doesn't matter how you shun the more right-wing guys. They will never hire you. Okay. Just how it's going to go. And especially if they don't, write their million words worth of comics quickly, your comics are not going to be to the point where it's going to be anywhere even near the Dan Slott that you complain about constantly to begin with, quality wise. So there is that, and that's just how it goes. So these guys, because of this, and because of this dream of Marvel DC, end up trying to play this tightrope line where they go, I'm not a real culture warrior. I'm just trying to create good comics and apolitical. And they use the word apolitical all the time too. And so they keep trying to virtue signal towards the industry that they're going to be one of them one day. And you can trust them not to be the type of person who's too extreme in hopes that they'll get loved by these people. And it's a shame because it's never going to happen. It's spinning their wheels, and all they're doing is actually hurting the movement, which needs to happen, which is these companies need to burn. These companies that are multinational global conglomerates that are pushing bad films, and that's it, and trying to maintain IPs and stifle creativity and stifle the market by flooding the market, need to die. Going and working for them is not going to save it, even if they would allow it, which they won't. And since that's the fight, they have to fight the people who are actually trying to do the real change in culture, who are trying to make the real effort to do something different. And so they become a disappointment on the culture war end because they're fighting against the true end that needs to happen. And it's sad. So that's it. Basically, the comic book complainer, no matter who they are, I'm probably triggered a few of you by just naming one name because the guy's going after me right now. But no matter who they are, will always end up in this specific problem because one, they're not willing to put the work in on the book front to actually become professional and good themselves. Two, they're not actually willing to fight the culture war because they want to be accepted by the mainstream corporate culture. That's it. So roundabout way to get there. I hope that it explains the tweet pretty well. And it's really easy to see who is actually doing things. I think it doesn't typically come from the comic book YouTube complainer community. You see people like Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini. They weren't comic YouTube complainers. They were, again, Mark was a writer first and Tim was a artist first. And so they got together and they do good work because both of them are good at their crafts and have worked on it. You've got myself. I was a writer. I was working for games. I was putting out novels. I worked for years and years and years in order to do this. You've got, of course, Chuck Dixon, who has been a comic writer for 30, 40 years, doing great work because he has done that. You've got Gary Shipman, same deal. He's been putting out his own comics for decades. He is a true comic creator. He's not a YouTube complainer who just happened to make a comic. And that's where the difference lies. So I hope people in 2021 will start to notice the trends. These are just trends, and it's pretty obvious once you see it, because we have a real opportunity to really push things forward, and I feel like we're kind of getting there. But there's still that holdout, that sort of like wish that these celebrities that we all latched on to in 2017, 2018 would really do it for us, and they're not going to. We need real change, and it's not going to come from people who don't put in the work, is what it comes down to. All right. Hope that was interesting, and I will talk to you guys soon. You can still get in on Flying Sparks, so if you go to the backer kit, which I'll put down in the link below, I've got a pre-order store up. I just sent out digital rewards. The book's out digitally. I'm getting my proof of the print version of volume 4 in a couple days here. And then we'll be hitting print and going on the full print run. So make sure you get in now. You can get all of my books in paperback here. And for my novels and stuff, I'll sign them for you if you want, whatever you want. And on the other front, you can get all of my comics on ebook immediately. I can't do my books because I'm exclusive to Amazon on the novels, but you can check out every single comic absolutely right now. And then you can see what I'm talking about in terms of putting in the quality time and work and effort into becoming a real professional scripter that a lot of these guys aren't. Because look, 3 issues here, 3 issues here, 3 issues here, 3 issues here. That's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Whoops, napalm's not mine. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And this doesn't even include the Ember War, which I scripted for Richard Fox. So 26. I've got 26 produced in the last, 2 years. And I've got, 4 or 5 more just in the pipeline that have not actually come out, but are done. And I've, just done hundreds of scripts other than that. So this is what real work looks like. And this is how you can tell an actual comic professional, because they're actually being professional. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon.